Huh. Okay. No, but possibly. All right. Hmm. Maybe I have something figured out. Not sure. Oh, okay. Carry on. Wonders of technology. Good when they work. When they don't, not smart enough to know what to do with them. Get it to the round. Get it relatively smooth. And we're going to go from there. I think about 3 inches high, or 3 inches in diameter, I think. Where I saw a crack. I thought I saw a crack. And that definitely looks like a crack. Hmm. Can't have cracks. This piece isn't really entirely too long for a vase. I'm going to trip the ends. I just use my parting tool. This parting tool is ground at an angle, which matches the dovetail jaws on my Vic Mark chucks. It does make it very easy to create a proper tenon. It also makes it easy to clean up these ends. Hopefully that's going to give us a better look. Maybe, maybe not. Cracks are definitely not our friend. So we're just over 7. I think it would be E better. This one was more like 5. Let's call it 5.5. We're going to go ahead and put tenons on both ends, and we'll cut that off. Certainly don't need to be a giant size tenon. As always, I get rid of those ragged edges, more so because that's the sharp edges. It could cut you very quickly. I'm going to cut. Without a really bright light to shine down in there, it's a little tricky to see how thin you're getting in there. I'm not dangerously thin. I still don't think I am. Much safer to cut it off. Leave a little bit of pressure because it won't let you cut the whole way through. But as you can see, that right there is what would happen if you parted it the whole way off. This thing would literally go bind together and go flying. Don't need that. Don't need that excitement. So now we can go to the chuck. We'll true up that end down there, the end that we just parted off a little bit. We'll put another tenon down there because this is going to be we're going to do this differently than what we did last night. This would be a way of doing a small vase, or a vase, period. It wouldn't have to be small, without having hollowing holes. So grabbing our chuck, thumbs directly in the center, pushing back towards the chuck. That will keep it centered in the chuck, and make sure it's nice and tight. And to clean up this end, we'll just use our spindle gouge. Give me a much cleaner cut than a parting tool will. Not necessarily normally do them in this fashion. If you think about this a second. So what I'm going to do on this end, Look at down here. What I'm going to do is cut a little bit of a hole in there, because this other piece that I cut off will become a plug that I can put up inside of that, a little tapered plug, and glue that back in place. So I'm going to need a little bit of some sort of a tenon out here to grab a hold of. And then we can just give it sort of a general, that's how we'll do that. Give it a little bit of a general shape. The rest is entirely too long for what we're doing now. Probably would be easiest if I would mark that as a proper size tenon for that. It might help. So I know where it's going to be. Yeah, somewhere in the middle of that. Somewhere thereabouts. Yeah, ain't gonna work. Somewhere thereabouts. Now we can think about shape. Is it over 6 inches long? No, it's not. So that's going to be the very base down there. So let's say our low point's going to be somewhere around about the 2-inch mark up in there. It gotta work. We'll find out. This small piece of wood. If we mess it up, we mess it up. But so that's our center point of our cove, which is probably a good place to start. And we're going to bring a tailstock back up. That's a lot of, sort of a lot of meat hanging out in no man's land, so to speak. So you might as well give it some support. It'll make shaping a whole lot easier. So we know that's our center point, or thereabouts. The top part will be too big when we get to that point. Right now we're just kind of looking for a general shape so that we can get rid of some of the material in the base. I'm not really worried at all about the top part. Did this thing freeze on me, really? This is not my night. Because it certainly looks like it did. Huh? Maybe not. Why does it look frozen over there? Don't know. I'm not gonna mess with it. We're not gonna be on here real long tonight. I think we need to go down to the smaller size chuck valve in there. Make that more the what I want. Really more so I can get the shape that I want. And don't do it that way. It's the dumb way of doing it. Okay. Switch back to the spindle gouge, which should have been what I was using to start with to do that. I was using my bowl gouge. It worked, but I was being careless when I went around the corner and tried to go down into that area. We're making very nice shape here tonight. afraid I'm going to be able to use that one as the plug. I can't do that. Or can I? Let's take a look at that. I might be able to just cut this one off since it's got such a big taper to it. It might work. I'm not sure. Guess we're going to find out. Makes it much harder to get the shape that I'm looking for some reason. Seem to be getting more of an abrupt curve than what I want. Okay. I think that's going to work. I'm actually going to give this a little bit of a tenon on this end of this. And I'm going to cut that. Literally cut it off. Maybe. Looks like it's a little too much of a cone. I want a little bit of a taper, but I don't want the giant size taper that I had on there. I think it's more realistic. This can be smaller. Something like that. We're going to say that's going to be good enough. And we'll go back to our thin parting tool. Let's say I have one that's thinner than that. I don't want to lose a bunch of material. Once again, no sense being a hero and trying to part that off. That one you could if I removed the tailstock. But it doesn't necessarily do what you want it to do. Okay. So that little piece we have to save. So this technically is a grain match to what's already there. And we'll have to get there. Maybe I'll see what we're doing. I certainly chewed up that side, or that end a little bit with the saw, so we'll just clean that up so that everything's clean to start. Okay, so it's okay, because that's why I put a tenon on that. Probably could have been a little longer than what I have it. But I think we'll be alright. So I know about how much material I can remove with it. The spindle gouge will drill a hole. Because it's actually like a spoon drill bit, if you know what they would be. This might be a little challenging to get as deep as what I want to go. But we're gonna have a go at it. Now we're getting somewhere. Takes a bit of force, especially with this stuff. So we're up into there. So we're the whole way up, 3/4 of the way up. I want to go just a little bit further. It's about the size of a hole. I was kind of thinking from the top. It's just easy to bring it down from the top. Do keep in mind when you're jamming that in there like that, it's going to get rather warm rather quickly. Now I went back to my bowl gouge. I'm using it on its side, and I'm sweeping towards the outside, which is cutting across the grain. You just don't want to open that flute. It's pretty much staying on its side. Otherwise, it will become very aggressive very quickly. Probably could actually even go to a bigger size of a bowl gouge to go with it. Because it will want to chatter in there. Because ideally I want to get the whole way to the bottom of that hole that I have drilled in there. They're pretty close to it. I'm going to grab the Grab the 5/8 bowl gouge because it won't care that we're hanging over that far. Bigger bar will allow me to do that a little easier. That hole opened up far enough to be able to get the bigger bowl gouge. We can start thinning this down a little bit while we're at it. We're still trying to match the inside shape to the outside shape, so to speak. We could go to a hollowing bar or something like that, but this will work just as well. I needed to move the tool rest down a little bit though. It is a 5/8 gouge, so I was trying to cut too much above center. Other thing we could possibly use in a place like this could be a traditional scraper or a negative rate scraper, I guess. Let's look in little areas. Probably will also have a tendency to knock the edge off fairly quickly because it's all you're using is a little bit of an edge. It's certainly a little thicker than what it needs to be, but it will be light even at this rate. It will be definitely be lighter than way lighter than a solid piece of wood. And that's in the whole way to my finger, so that's up into there. I like to get it a little bit like that finger. Might. I think we'll just work on cleaning this up a little bit. Certainly not a real fast process, but it does work. Probably no slower than doing it with hollowing tools. Hollowing tools would probably be a little bit more accurate than this inside. So that's the part I had to be concerned about. Got up there higher and getting quite thin. So I need to take a little bit Switch back over to the 1/2 inch gouge. Take a little bit more from third of the way down into here. I think we'll call that good enough. And leave a pretty clean surface in there. You might see how it looks like. You might have to use something a little differently there. Always a plus if the plug doesn't necessarily fit in there, which it doesn't. And we can make that fit easy enough. I think we're gonna brave it, and we're gonna go up into that hole a little bit higher. Switch back to my spindle gouge. See if I can find where I can get into that hole in there. This is really a lot of overhang in the tool. Oops, we lock the tool rest firmly in place. Okay. So another 1/2 inch or so up in there. And that'll work. In a really good world, would have made that tenant, this little plug, a little bit smaller than what it is. But we didn't, so that's going to create us another bit of an issue, because now we got to fit that into that hole. Scrape cut these here. Because that's still not gonna. It's getting much closer though. So a little, as long as I don't lose it, I'm being good. So I don't think we're gonna do any sanding yet. Actually, better yet, we're not where we want to be on the inside. Now that I took it off and can really see what I was looking at. It's still really thick up in here. I don't want it really thick up in there. It feels like I got it. Not a good move to stick your finger in there while it's still moving though. That feels better. Made that thinner. Not quite as thin as down in here, but we're still got some more shaping to do up here, so we'll be okay there. I'll check some wall thickness here while I'm here. It's actually thinner than what it feels, just according to my gauge. It's definitely not very undercut right in that general area right there, but that's okay. That's going to live. Okay. I'll go to our little chuck and we're going to make that little tenon or little plug and make that fit into our piece. I'll probably just simply use, a parting tool. If it's not getting all that dust up underneath things here, and then they don't want to slide. And it's time to take the banjo off. I can feel when I put my fingers up there, I can feel what happens is the dust and dirt gets up on that round bar in there, and it doesn't like to. We're very close there. That it doesn't slide. Probably can even use a small skew on the side as sort of a negative rake scraper. I'm going to leave it a taper for sure. Because I did make a taper on the inside. Okay, it goes up on there. A little turn should leave me a burnish line on there. Right there's where it's fitting. I can go just behind that line a little bit. Take that down just a shade. I certainly don't want to pound this in. I also don't want it to go the whole way in. But it could definitely go in further than that. Ideally would have just a little bit of that tenon sticking out. Kind of a little nerve-wracking, when you're working right up tight against the chuck jaws. I couldn't ask for it to be a much tighter fit than that. It's literally going to go the whole way in, I think now. It does. It's almost, I couldn't do that twice in my lifetime. It's almost a perfect fit in there. Actually, I might have, no, I didn't do that. Okay. I was going to say, now it's not going to come back out. But it did. All right. So I'm going to go get a little wood glue. Try and line up. Since it came out, it's almost too loose. almost. The glue has to have some space in there to work. This plug actually wants to fall through. Shoot. Of course. And that's why we saved the other big piece. Probably would work. No, it will fall through. So that's not going to work. Sounded like a good plan. Good plan didn't quite work as well as it should have. Key. So I made that giant size. Much bigger than what it needed to be. Should be, even. That's all good. It's just going to give me a lot more room to move in here. We'll clean up our end. Razor blade goes away. So now we have a nice clean cut in there. So we're going to set a pair of dividers to this diameter. So we know we're going to. It's going to be somewhere about there. And I don't want that one. Just use a straight parting tool a bit easier. Give it a taper down into there. And we know that shouldn't really matter. So we'll go right down to our line, creating a pretty good sized taper, coming back up the hill, so to speak. So yeah, it doesn't fit down there. It just barely wants to squeak over that. So now we can start to make this taper less. If I take my trusty pencil, I could even put a little line in there. I'd like it to go down in there a wee bit further than that. Not that that wouldn't be enough, but okay, now all we have to do is sort of loosen the whole thing up a little bit. That's one place I do use a skew on its side. It just makes it really nice and forgiving. It's a nice sort of tight, squeaky kind of fit in there, which is a good thing, sort of. One more pencil line will help, maybe. Should have left myself some more room for the whole way up in there. That's more than deep enough. In order to get some things out of the road, we're just going to get rid of some of this. I haven't done one like this in a very long time. And it very much shows. I'm just having another brainy attack. I don't like this big giant size part out here. So now I have a plug that I can put into a smaller, much smaller chuck. I don't have so much in my road. Get a little wood glue. Glue that in, and while it's setting up, may not actually be able to finish this. So I might probably will end up waiting on it. Would be a better idea. We know what we need. Not really any need to put on both surfaces. Just I had the excess on my finger. We have a center hole back here from when we started. So if I just simply push that into it, up against it, so that it can't spin, we should be good. And now we're basically back in between centers. Here's where, here's where we might be taking a bit of a risk. I don't necessarily like to wait on too many things like this, so but while it's doing that, I'm going to go over and give this the wetback grind bowl gouge a little touch up. Make sure it's good and sharp. Looks like that should work. And remove a little bit more of the heel. I have a much shorter bevel, which will allow me to turn a shorter radius, shorter curve. In this case, it'll be a cove. No real surprise, it does run true, and it should. We just want to be gentle. And go back to where we should be. That would make more sense. Bad habit of forgetting that. My apologies. This needs to come down quite a bit. More in that area. And there's where we get to find out whether we took too much out in that area. Doesn't sound like it. If it sounds hollow when you tap your fingernail on there, that's a really good indication that it might not be quite what you want. Go from the bowl gouge over to the spindle gouge and clean this area up. Give it a little chamfer or something up on the top there a little bit. Really trying to land sort of in the middle, the cove. We'll have to try not to go beyond that center point. Go beyond that center point, then we start back uphill. It just causes a whole lot of aggravation. Might have, and this, I don't know, this hackberry is just not forgiving at all. It wants to lift up some grain very, very quickly. I did the one last night. I really couldn't figure out which direction it wanted to lift it up in. try this way first. And this did better. Didn't go quite far enough. Leave a little ridge there. I'm not going to worry about that. I just don't want the. There we go. We got the grain to lay down mostly. It does have some little wormholes and defects in it anyhow, but I think I'm going to say I'm going to be happy with that shape. Not totally. There's some bumps in there. You can also go back to my spindle roughing gouge for that part right there. And just do a teeny tiny little scrapey cut in the way, just to get rid of that hump. Just a little, it can be a little bit easier to make that shape, even though that's going to require a little bit more sanding than the rest is. But that's all good. That's a little easier to sand that little extra there than to try and sand out that lump that was there. So now we'll just give this a chamfer. Into there. And clean up some of this. The real question is, how much of this almost looks like I can dig a whole lot of this out. You'll see it better going that direction. I don't want to release, I can't release the tailstock until that glue is totally dried. But what I want to do is dig this down in here. Really, ideally would be to drill the hole first. And then I get in there with a spindle gouge and just sort of scrape that area out, which is probably a better way of doing it. I'm going to switch to laundry. I think the last thing tonight, I think we're just going to give that a sort of a quick going over of sanding wise. And I'll finish that another day. Because this will be the second one. I want them for Sunday night's live stream. For any reason we're streaming tonight, I'm trying to figure out why it's not pushing this vertical stream over to the shorts feed. Of course, this grit's going to be the longest of the sanding. In this case, this is actually 120 because I didn't do as good of a job as what I should have. I had to get rid of some defects. So now we'll just go through a couple grits. So let the speed down a little bit more. Fingers are getting hot. That means I'm pushing too hard. It's going too fast. All the above. If I go too fast, the sandpaper just literally skips over the edge and doesn't really sand. I try not to do that part. For sandpaper's like everything else, it needs to be sharp. That piece is definitely not. And now I'm not trying to feel to see whether it's smooth. I'm getting rid of the dust, mainly the little bits of grit that might have fall off that piece of sandpaper. Okay. Lastly, we'll go with the grain a little bit on the final grit, which was 600. This is going to get turned black like the one I did last night. I'm not going to do that till I'm a whole lot closer to being finished, because we still having to drill that hole and do this top part up here. It's going to put considerable amount of stress on that part down there, so that could very easily fail and have a do-over. Hopefully not, but would not surprise me, put it that way. So we'll let that sit overnight. Come back tomorrow, hopefully sometime. Probably take this little section in here that I left earlier. I'll probably try and make that a little bit smaller, or even try and sneak in there and cut it off. And then we'll drill a hole. We don't have to drill a very deep hole. That's one good thing. I might actually be able to do it with a spindle gouge too, because we only got to drill a hole probably down into about here, and then we're going to meet up with the other existing hole. And once that's accomplished, we'll still have I still need a gripping point when I'm done. So this part down here will stay until we're completely finished with everything else. That'll be the last thing I do is to flip this around, cut using the cone to drive it, and then we'll take that last little bit off at the bottom. That's the plan anyhow. But gonna be it for tonight. We certainly didn't learn anything on the streaming end of it by the looks of it. I guess we're back to sort of square one. It's not going out to the shorts feed again. I don't know why. No clue. Oh well. Can't do it from there.